The moment she stepped into the field hospital, no one in the unit suspected the truth. They saw her white coat, the medical bag slung across her shoulder, the calm, measured steps that mirrored the rhythm of a nurse walking through hallways of sterile uncertainty. But what they didn't know, what the enemy would never see coming, was that every movement, every glance, every quiet inhale was part of a calculation far deadlier than anyone could imagine. The air smelled of antiseptic sweat and the metallic temps of fear. Outside, artillery shells were hammering the perimeter. But inside, the wounded clung to life, eyes wide and uncomprehending. And there she moved among them, serene, almost invisible, like a shadow in the chaos. Like, subscribe, and click the bell icon for more stories. Corporal Amelia Hayes had been deployed to the front line as a combat medic, or at least that was the story everyone told themselves. The camera would follow her footsteps through the muddy corridors, the dirt crunching softly under boots, the faint hum of generators providing a heartbeat to the hospital's fragile structure. She crouched beside a young soldier whose leg had been torn open by shrapnel, her hands steady, applying pressure, whispering words of comfort. The soldiers around her saw only the healer, the one whose job was to save lives. But in her mind, Amelia was already planning for the moment when the field hospital would no longer be a sanctuary, when it would become the front line itself. Reports of enemy scouts had been circulating all morning. The commanding officers were tense, but clung to the belief that their medical tent would be left untouched, a neutral zone in the eyes of international convention. But Amelia knew better. Her years of training, countless nights spent under sniper fire and in ambush drills, had taught her that the enemy had no respect for signs or rules. She could hear the faint vibrations under the ground, the way the tents shuddered with distant explosions. Every instinct screamed that today the hospital would become a battlefield. Yet she moved with purpose. Her hands adjusted bandages. Her voice reassured terrified soldiers. Her eyes scanned every corner, every shadow. She carried herself like a woman who belonged entirely to this moment, even as her mind calculated trajectories, exit routes, and angles of engagement. And when a new patient was rushed in, blood soaking the canvas of the tent, she didn't flinch. Not outwardly. Inside, however, a storm was brewing, a storm that would soon tear the assumptions of friend and foe alike apart. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long blood-red streaks across the sky, Amelia paused for a moment by the entrance. Her gaze traveled over the sandbags and barbed wire to the silhouettes of soldiers moving cautiously through the smoke. Her hand brushed the sidearm hidden beneath her coat. Not a nurse's hand, not a medic's hand. But no one else in the field hospital could know that she was counting. Counting seconds, counting shadows, counting the moments until the enemy would force her hand. And in that pause, the weight of what was about to unfold pressed down on her, a pressure only a woman who had stared death in the face could understand. Then it came the first distant echo of gunfire that sounded wrong. Not the regular chaos of a skirmish outside the perimeter, but closer, deliberate, searching. Amelia's eyes narrowed. The enemy had found their mark, and the sanctuary of the hospital was about to be violated. The camera would linger on her face, catching the cold resolve, the unspoken promise that anyone who underestimated her would regret it. Somewhere in that moment, every soldier in the tent still thought they were safe. They had no idea that in just minutes, Amelia Hayes would redefine the very meaning of survival. The tent shuddered again, this time from an explosion nearby, and as dust and fear mingled in the dim light, she whispered under her breath. Not to the wounded, not to anyone but herself, let them come. The first bullets tore through the canvas walls of the hospital like angry snakes. Panic erupted instantly. Soldiers who had minutes ago been focused on bandages and vital signs now scrambled for cover, their eyes wide, hearts pounding. The enemy had assumed this was a soft target, a tent full of medics and wounded men. They had assumed wrong. Amelia Hayes didn't flinch, not once. She had anticipated this, trained for it, and in the briefest fraction of a second, her mind became a map of angles, threats, and targets. The camera would follow her hands as she slid her medical bag aside, revealing a sleek, custom rifle that had been concealed beneath the coat. One weapon, one woman, 45 enemy fighters. And the first few of them didn't even know she was there. The chaos was deafening. The shouts of men in terror mixed with the crack of rifles and the distant thunder of artillery. A soldier screamed as a fragment of shrapnel tore through the tent. But Amelia moved with purpose, almost rhythmically, her eyes scanning, measuring. Her first shots were precise, almost surgical. Each enemy fighter that thought themselves safely hidden behind sandbags, behind overturned medical tables, fell silently to the ground. The others hesitated. The audacity of a lone medic standing in their line of fire was disorienting, confusing, and confusion was Amelia's ally. Her movements were fluid, a combination of lethal training and instinct honed over years of combat. The camera would follow her as she ducked behind a gurney, rolled across the floor, and emerged behind a wounded soldier to shield him from crossfire. But even as she protected the men she was sworn to save, her rifle worked with a terrifying efficiency. Each trigger pull was calculated, each breath timed with the rhythm of the chaos. She had memorized the field, knew every nook and shadow where the enemy could hide, and now she used it against them. Soldiers watched in disbelief. They had been trained to expect bravery, to expect resilience, but not this. Not a woman in a medic's coat taking down enemy fighters like a spectre of vengeance. Lieutenant Ramirez shouted commands, but the words were drowned out by gunfire and explosions. Still, Amelia moved with precision. She fired, ducked, reloaded, and fired again, each round finding its mark with uncanny accuracy. The enemy thought numbers alone could overwhelm them. They had forgotten that skill, discipline, and resolve could outweigh sheer force. And yet, even as adrenaline surged through her veins, Amelia's mind was clear. She could feel the fear in the tent, the palpable terror of soldiers witnessing the impossible. But there was no hesitation, no fear of failure. She reminded herself why she was there, why she carried the responsibility of life and death on her shoulders. For every wounded soldier she had tended in quiet moments, there was now an enemy combatant she would eliminate to ensure their survival. And the tally had only just begun. Through the smoke and the stench of blood, she spotted a group attempting to flank the medical area. Without hesitation, she shifted her position, her rifle scanning the horizon, every muscle coiled like a spring. The first shot was enough to halt them, the second to bring one down. One by one, she dismantled the assault. The camera would linger on her expression, a calm fury, eyes sharp, body steady, and then cut to the soldiers' faces, wide with awe and disbelief. No one could understand how one person could be so deadly, so precise, so untouchable. And then came a moment that froze time. A young enemy fighter slipped through a gap closer than anyone should have allowed. Amelia's heartbeat slowed, her breathing measured. She didn't panic. She squeezed the trigger, and the man fell silently before he could raise his weapon. 45 targets awaited her. And in that heartbeat, the entire field hospital seemed to hold its breath. The tent shook again, heavier this time. Outside, reinforcements were arriving, and the enemy had realized that the medic was no ordinary target. But Amelia Hayes had already calculated her next move, already anticipated the chaos they would bring. And in that tense, suspended moment, she whispered under her breath, "They think I'm just a medic. They will learn too late." The field hospital was no longer a place of healing. It had become a cage of chaos, a battlefield cloaked in the trappings of medicine. The camera would follow the smoke curling through the tent, the way it mingled with the scent of blood and antiseptic, the way it distorted the harsh fluorescent light above. Soldiers ducked behind overturned tables and stacked medical crates, their faces pale, eyes wide with disbelief. And through it all moved Amelia Hayes, a calm and deadly shadow in the heart of madness. She had become the line between life and death, between survival and annihilation, and every step she took carried the weight of that responsibility. Enemy fighters were everywhere now, advancing with the confidence of numbers, but Amelia had anticipated this. She shifted from cover to cover, scanning, calculating, striking. Every shot she fired was deliberate, precise, and terrifying in its efficiency. One after another, the attackers fell, their bodies collapsing into the dusty floor. Their comrades' screams drowned out by the crack of her rifle and the chaos surrounding them. Each kill was a punctuation mark in a sentence of survival, a sentence she was writing with deadly clarity. Soldiers who had believed the hospital was untouchable now looked at her with a mix of awe and fear. They whispered her name, some in disbelief, some as if invoking a guardian angel. Amelia moved among them, sometimes shielding the wounded, sometimes repositioning for the next strike, always calm, always focused. The camera would linger on the terrified faces of the enemy. The way their assumptions about a medic's role shattered in the harsh light of her lethal precision. They had come thinking the hospital was an easy target. They had thought a woman in a white coat could be ignored. And now, in minutes, they were learning the cruel lesson of underestimation. Amelia's mind raced, yet her actions were deliberate. She could feel the rhythm of the battle, almost like a pulse. Each explosion, each shout, each crack of gunfire became a metronome, guiding her movements. A soldier tried to flank her from the left. She pivoted, aimed, and took him down before he even realized she had noticed. A pair of attackers tried to breach the main entrance. Her rifle barked once, twice, and they crumpled silently. It was artistry in motion, a deadly dance choreographed by years of training and instinct, fueled by a determination that would not falter. And yet, amidst the carnage, a deeper tension pulsed. Amelia knew that the longer the battle dragged on, the higher the risk to her wounded soldiers. She could feel the fragility of life pressing in from every side. She had to end this, had to shift the tide before it became a slaughter of those she had sworn to protect. Her focus sharpened further, every sense heightened. She anticipated each footstep, each shadow, each movement of her enemy. But the enemy was relentless. More fighters were pushing toward the hospital now, breaking through barricades, ignoring the bodies of their fallen comrades. They were not expecting her, and yet they were learning too late that numbers alone could not win against skill, against resolve, against a woman who had dedicated herself to protecting lives and punishing those who threatened them. Through the smoke, through the shouts, through the chaos, Amelia moved like a phantom. Her rifle never wavered, her aim never faltered. And in that suspended moment, when the tent seemed to vibrate with the tension of an unseen storm, she realized the full scale of what she had to do. This was no longer about defending a hospital. This was about survival, hers, the soldiers, and the fate of 45 enemy fighters who would soon learn the true cost of underestimating Amelia Hayes. And then, from the far corner of the tent, a sudden movement caught her eye, faster, cleverer, deadlier than the rest. She froze for a heartbeat, then whispered, "Here it comes." The movement in the far corner was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet Amelia Hayes saw it instantly. Her instincts screamed danger. The camera would trace her narrowed eyes, following every calculated shift of her body as she adjusted her position, blending with the shadows of overturned tables and stacks of medical supplies. This was no ordinary enemy soldier. This was someone trained, someone thinking faster, moving smarter, a predator among chaos. And for the first time in this battle, Amelia felt the weight of true confrontation settle like ice in her chest. The enemy had assumed she was just a medic. They hadn't counted on experience, on precision, on calm under fire. They hadn't counted on the way she had studied every corner of this hospital, memorized every entrance and exit, every shadow that could hide a threat. And now the threat had come to test her. Amelia's grip tightened around her rifle. Her heart rate was steady. Her mind ran through contingency after contingency, calculating angles, predicting movement. Every second counted. Lives depended on it. A young soldier cowered behind a gurney nearby, trembling, and she caught his gaze. "Stay down," she said, voice steady, commanding. Not a shout, not a plea, a certainty that filled the space between chaos and survival. Then, with almost imperceptible movement, she rose, pivoted, and fired. The enemy flinched, but this one was different. He dodged, rolled, returned fire. Bullets whistled past her, tearing the air with deadly precision. This was no longer just defense. This was a duel, a battle of skill, strategy, and nerves. Amelia ducked behind a metal stretcher, bullets pinging against the frame, sparks flying. The wounded watched in wide-eyed silence as the woman they thought could only heal now fought like a warrior, unstoppably, unsackably. Every shot she fired found its mark, but the enemy adapted quickly. He moved, disappeared, reappeared, a ghost in camouflage. And yet Amelia matched him step for step, shot for shot. Her calm was absolute. Her determination ironclad. She wasn't just fighting to survive. She was fighting to protect every life in that tent. Time seemed to stretch and contract. Every second was a lifetime. The enemy lunged forward, aiming to breach her position and strike down the soldiers she shielded. Amelia's mind raced, recalling drills, simulations, real-life combat experience. She anticipated, fired, and shifted positions with deadly grace. Sparks from ricocheting bullets lit her face like a flickering flame, her eyes cold, calculating, alive. And then, in a single fluid movement, she landed the decisive shot. The enemy collapsed, incapacitated before he could strike again. The silence afterward was deafening. Dust hung in the air, mingled with smoke and the scent of gunpowder. Soldiers who had cowered moments ago now stared at her in disbelief. 45 enemy fighters had come, confident and ruthless. Amelia had turned the hospital into a fortress, each shot she fired a testament to skill, courage, and unyielding resolve. And yet, even as the adrenaline faded, a heavier weight pressed on her chest. She had survived, but at what cost?